I always crack up because I remember like typing on my keyboard and literally thinking any day now they are going to notice my hard work. And then I'm thinking, they're going to come and say, "Hey, Rosie, this is your promotion." And, the big joke is that guess what? Nobody ever came. It was like, so because I felt stuck. I felt like I was like, okay, am I invisible here? Like what's going on? And then seeing people younger than I was getting promoted, I'm like, okay, something's wrong. And it was that they were asking for the promotions and I wasn't yet.
Welcome to Take a Beat, a podcast dedicated to career pivoters and those who are wanting to pause on the hustle, get clear on your direction, and head toward the life that you envision. Today's episode explores promotion readiness and how to intentionally prepare for the next step in your career. To help explore this topic, I talked with Rosie Zilinskas, a certified high-performance career coach and former Fortune 500 executive with more than 30 years of experience. As you'll hear, Rosie knows what it's like to wait for recognition that never comes. And after that realization, she made a big change, deciding that she would no longer wait for the promotion and instead actively campaign for that next step. She eventually landed her dream role as an executive vice president, and now she's dedicated to helping other women earn the acknowledgement that they deserve. If you've ever felt stuck, overlooked, or unsure how to become more visible or recognized in your career, take a listen to hear more of Rosie's story, as well as the strategies that she now uses as part of her promotion readiness map to help others stop waiting and start leading. Thanks so much for joining today. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about promotion readiness and how people can prepare themselves to take the next step in their career. To get us started, I'm curious how you became interested in this particular topic.
Well, a lot of it comes from my own story. It's so interesting because I was 40 and I had just ended like a 4-year long divorce. And I was solely responsible for the financial care of my kids. They were 5 and 7 at the time, and now they're almost 25 and 27. So it's been 20 years. But I was kind of trying to think. I'm like, okay, I now have these two little kids that I am responsible for. Obviously, that I love them. And so racking my brain, like, how can I make more money? And the best way I could is like, okay, I need to go talk to my boss because by that time I had already kind of refocused on my career. And I was seeing people that were getting promoted that had come in after me, younger people. And I'm like, okay, what the heck am I doing wrong? And when I finally spoke to a senior executive and I said, you know what, I'd really like to be considered for a leadership, they were like, well, you never said anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that those 4 words, like you never said anything, that was like a pivotal thing from that conversation, just by the mere fact that I said, I would like to be considered about, and it was all like just good timing because one regional underwriting manager left. I was in the insurance industry, so I was promoted into that job. But once I got that management position, I realized that I had to do something differently. So and now I say this in my keynote, like I started campaigning for me. So I started having all these conversations with senior leaders, getting advice, asking other people, asking for feedback, obviously preparing all the tactical things like your resume and your LinkedIn and all those pieces. But the promotion readiness roadmap was born from all of the things that I did in preparation for my next role, which was an executive vice president.
So then it sounds like you maybe weren't considered for the promotion because you just never expressed any interest in it.
Yeah, I just didn't, I was not able to clearly explain to my manager that I wanted to be a manager. I was doing things that were kind of getting me ready for that position, but I never said, "Hey, when the next promotion or when the next opportunity opens up, I want to be considered." And then the other key thing that I think happened is I met with 2 levels up. So it was my boss's boss's boss. So it was like two levels above my boss. And I think that was the difference there because I think my boss knew, but the people in the senior executive realm weren't aware. And that's what I thought was really interesting because how could you not know if it's all part of your department? And it was just kind of a miscommunication. But to my credit, when I said, "Hey, I want to go talk to the senior executive," my boss was like, "Go for it." So it worked out really well.
And once you started campaigning for yourself, how did things start to shift for you? What was the change like?
Well, so it was about 3 years. I was the regional underwriting manager and I was in my seat for about 3 years. And I'm always like, I've noticed like right at the 3 year mark, I start getting really antsy. It's like, what's next? What am I doing? Like, where's my career going? And so right around that 3 years, I started thinking, I'm like, okay, I was really comfortable with everything that I was doing. I knew that I couldn't grow anymore in that particular position. And that's when I started the conversations with, I talked to about 10 senior leaders, all senior executives in all different departments of my organization. So I was in the underwriting department, but I spoke to a woman in London, a woman or a risk manager in California. I talked to people on the legal team. I mean, just all kinds of different departments. And with every single leader, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm interested in moving up and advancing. I don't know what that looks like, but I just kind of want you to know. And how did you do it? What did you do? What advice could you give me? So I started having all of those conversations. And then it took another couple of years for an opening to come up. It was a home office position. And I knew, I mean, from the moment that I knew that this person was leaving, I'm like, that is my job. And I was just like laser focused. So I had my brother-in-law interview me, my sister interview me. I bought that book. I went to the library and I looked at all the career books. So I bought the book that they publish every year, What Color is My Parachute? I did every exercise in that book. So, you know, I eventually did get uh, awarded that position of an executive vice president. And I always like to say, it's not that I was, not that I'm not smart, but it's not that I was the smartest person in, interviewing, but I was the most prepared person because and this is like something that's kind of a bragging moment, but at the same time I'm really proud because there were 10 candidates going for that position and there were four senior executives that were interviewing and I was the unanimous choice from all of those people and those senior executives because I did a look forward plan. Like this is what I would do the first, 3, 4 months. And I did a succession plan for the person that was going to step into my role. This is everything that they need to do. So I went above and beyond, but it was all in the intention of being the most prepared. And what the big thing that I learned from that is that the more I learned about myself through all of those exercises and all those conversations, the more confidence I gained to talk about the value that I brought to the table.
Well, congrats. That's awesome. I brag away, like to make that. I mean, it sounds like it was almost like a pivot of the role, like something you had not done before, maybe within the same organization, but these were totally new skills, totally new job role for you. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. This was a home office position. I stepped into the organization's learning and development leader. So I stepped into training full time and I was doing a little bit of training before, but I took that on. I took the audit team. I took a couple of other, just different underwriting roles. And it was a very visible role. I was leading training once a month for 200 people. And I would have all the underwriting team, the operations team, the risk management team, so the product management team. So I was the one that was leading all of that. And I eventually started writing all of the standard operating procedures. And I was really good at looking at a process, breaking it down, doing all the research, and then building it back up and then training. So that was all brand new to me.
Well, out of curiosity, when you saw that job posting and you thought that's my job, what about it signaled to you like that's my job? What got you so interested in it?
It was this feeling that I had been working towards all of the descriptions, again, like the processes, the communication, the leadership, the visibility of it, having to deal with many different teams, many different partners, like the strategic partners within the organization. And so it just, I mean, it was just one of those things that I'm like I said before, this is my job. I'm going to, and I remember walking into one of my peers at the time and I'm like, this is my job. And they're like, yep, I get it. It's like, it was almost like built for me, so it was really cool.
So all the things that you had done before, maybe in your career, were kind of knitting together and like leading you toward this.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, I mean, now it sounds like you've pivoted again, and now you coach other women specifically on how they can step into more leadership roles or, become promoted at work. What made you want to take that leap?
Well, when I was still in the corporate world and I left the corporate world, well, they invited me to leave, so my position got downsized. And I had already been, I think I started in 2019. At that time, my kids were 15 and 17. And I'm like, I have all of this knowledge and all of this information in my head that I can share with other people. And I started volunteering. So I started with Dress for Success as an organization in Chicago. It's around the country, but they help women that are um, in either in transition or that are maybe trying to get a job from welfare, unemployment, things like that. And so this organization would give them a whole outfit for their interview, and then they would pair them up with a career coach. And that's where I came in. I didn't do any of the styling, but I did talk to them about, how to show up, how to present themselves, a little bit of, interviewing skills. And that's how I was like, wow, I can really give back. And then I joined Toastmasters. I joined National Speakers Association, the Speakers Academy. And it's kind of cool now because I'm on the board of National Speakers Association for the Illinois chapter. And this coming January, I'm going to be one of the two deans that are now leading the Speakers Academy. So it's been a really cool transition, where I am. But all of the knowledge that I have, once I was volunteering for a little while, I'm like, gosh, I could really, I would love to coach women and be able to just help them gain that confidence. And throughout I think it's been like 6 years now that I've been doing that, but I have come to realize that through preparation, you gain that confidence. So when women come to me and they're like, "Oh, I need you to, teach me how to have confidence so that I can advocate." And I'm like, "Well, it's kind of the other way around. You have to prepare and do all, a number of things. And the more you know yourself, the more confidence you gain. So it's kind of it's one before the other, but the confidence comes second. The preparation is what gives you that complementary knowledge. And then the more you are able to, and the biggest thing is like when I tell people you need to advocate for yourself, they're like, well, what does that mean? And it's just explaining to your manager how you are a problem solver using your knowledge and your skills. And if you go to your manager's office or the hiring manager and say, you know what, I noticed that you have, problem A, B, and C, and I have, one or two options for each of these problems, they're going to be like, wait, what? You want to take this off my plate? You want to help me solve my problem? And I think that's a really key thing when people go to interview, they're really focused on them, like, what do I say? What do I do? And yes, you have to do all that preparation, but that conversation, whether it's with your manager or a hiring individual, you need to be focused on what their problem is and how you can bring solutions to them. And that's the biggest difference when you start showing that you can help them solve their problems through your knowledge and your skills. That's how you're advocating for yourself.
So essentially demonstrating your value by understanding where they're like the empathy piece, like this is probably their problem area, and here's how I particularly could come in and provide a solution.
Absolutely. Yep, you got it.
I think kind of related to this idea, I know one thing you talk about is the idea of feeling stuck, corporate women feeling stuck in their career, even though they're doing things quote unquote right. Is that a symptom of the same issue, or why do you think that might be?
I think it all goes back to that same thing that they are not intentional on being able to show their value and how they, and I'm going to say it again, how you solve problems with using your knowledge and your skills. And and that's kind of what happened to me. I was doing all the things. I was actually considered a high potential employee at the time. And I always crack up because I remember like typing on my keyboard and literally thinking, any day now, they are going to notice my hard work. And then I'm thinking, they're going to come and say, "Hey, Rosie, this is your promotion." And, the big joke is that, guess what? Nobody ever came. It was like, so because I felt stuck. I felt like I was like, okay, am I invisible here? Like what's going on? And then seeing people younger than I was getting promoted, I'm like, okay, something's wrong. And it was that they were asking for the promotions and I wasn't yet. And so when you're feeling stuck, it could also be and it generally falls into, I call them like the four blockers, the worthiness blocker, where you might not think that you're uh deserving of that job. I actually talked to a director of a group of 200 engineers, and I had done my keynote speech, and she came up to me and she's like, "Rosie, I still don't feel worthy of having that job." And I'm like, "But you're doing the job. You're an engineer. You're leading 200 engineers, so a lot of it is the mindset, the thoughts and the ideas that you think, they're not necessarily true or accurate. So it's your job to identify those thoughts and be able to reframe them into a positive idea. And that's a very simple exercise of a limiting belief. It's just those thoughts that are not helping you. So the worthiness blocker. The next one is the popularity blocker, where you think like, "Oh, I'm not one of the cool kids, I'm never going to get that job," type thing. Then you have the skills blocker, where people are like, "I need more training. I need more certifications. I need more knowledge before I can go and have the conversation." And then the last one is the visibility blocker, where you're like, "Oh, no, I don't want to go out there and put myself out there. I don't want to do the training. I don't want to have to speak in front of people. I don't want to, things like that." So usually when you're feeling stuck is because the missing component, it may not necessarily be that you're not any of those things. You're already doing the work, you're already knowledgeable enough, but you are holding yourself back because you think you're deficient in one of those blockers. And once you realize that you're okay just as you are, but you have to start having those conversations with the people that you're working with so that they know what you're interested in.
I guess for people who might struggle with advocating for themselves or self-promotion, how do you work with people on that? Because that can be a hindrance too, of being uncomfortable with that idea of maybe that falls into the visibility category of the self-promotion piece.
It definitely does. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to be able to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And it takes just one 10-minute conversation. And it's like anything, Katie. The more you do something, the better you get at it. And I mentioned I'm a keynote speaker. I've done my keynote speech like probably 100 times now. And now I don't get nervous doing it because I know what the flow, I know what I'm going to say. I know what my slide deck is going to, I know the stories that I'm going to share because it's the same keynote every time to different groups. But I can tell you the first time that I did it, I was shaking, I was nervous. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to die," that kind of thing. But it just takes practice. And it does take a little bit of gumption and intention on, sometimes you just have to push yourself to do something that's outside of your comfort zone. Nobody is going to be able to do the push-ups for you. Nobody's going to be able to eat healthy for you. You have to be intentional and do the work. And then as far as how what we do, I have a membership, and I actually just launched this, but the 4 phases of the promotion readiness roadmap kind of go along with the calendar year. So first quarter, we talk about uh, aspiring. Like, what is it that you aspire to do? What are your goals? Because, January 1st, people start looking at that. Second quarter, we kind of really dig into you're assessing yourself. So, what are your skills? What are you good at? Is your resume done? Your LinkedIn, all of those things. The third quarter is about advice. So, networking with people, getting those conversations on the books, asking people, what do I do well and what can I do better? And then the fourth quarter, which started yesterday, and then I launched the fourth quarter yesterday, it's that advocacy piece of I've done all these things throughout the year. And actually, yesterday in my membership, I talked about the fourth quarter, people kind of putting, taking their foot off the gas pedal. But really, the fourth quarter is because it's a little bit quieter, it's a really great time for you to start thinking about what is it that you aspire to do for the following year. So this is a time where it's a little bit quieter, especially after Thanksgiving. This is a time where you can have those really intentional conversations with the people that are making decisions about promotions and things like that. So that this fourth quarter is a really good time, but a lot of people don't take advantage of it because you're like, it's the holidays. Like, why bother? I'll just start again in January. So it's a missed opportunity for sure.
Well, it also sounds like, given that, it's a year preparation, playing the long game and patience, can
Yes.
definitely help with all of this. It's not necessarily overnight or in 2 weeks or in 2 months. Like sometimes it might take a little bit of time to get yourself prepared and then do the legwork to be able to then position yourself for the next role.
Yes, absolutely. And I do. So this is a membership. So usually we meet like the first Wednesday of the month, and I do the training. And then the third Wednesday of the month is like implementation, and then we have a Q&A that fourth week. So it's very much a I'm guiding you, but you're doing it's a DIY program, but I'm giving you all the tools. I'm giving you all of the training. I have some custom GPTs to go along with all of the different topics that we do. So it's a really well-defined program. But like you said, it's not a quick turnaround. However, I do this program on a private one-on-one coaching, and I've done it already. And it's the person that I was working on. They're like, when I'm not working, I can, meet every week. I was like, well, this program is not designed to meet every week because there's a lot of thinking and there's, just understanding yourself, and it takes time, it takes reflection. So it's really designed to go every 2 weeks. And then about week 4, she was like, oh, you know what? I hold on, I'm waving the white flag. It's a lot. And I was like, I told you, but I did what she needed to do. And it's very it's very much a self-discovery process. That's why in the membership, it takes a full year. And I always open up the membership with, I want you to be promotion ready. I want you to be able to self-advocate and build an amazing community, which we're doing. But that being promotion ready, when you go through this process of the promotion readiness roadmap, by the end of this process, if an opportunity pops up, you're not going to be scrambling for, oh my gosh, now I have to update my resume. Now what am I going to do, say during the interview? So we create a story vault and we talk about really crafting your script and what words you're going to say. So it's a lot of the preparation. And, through my company, we do professional resumes. And a lot of times people are like, oh, I can do it on my own. And I'm like, if you could afford to hire somebody to write your professional resume, have somebody write your professional resume. Don't worry about the formatting and the ATS, and let the expert do that. And then you invest your time on preparing for the interview, because that's where you're really going to shine in the interview. And nobody can do the interview for you. So I always, that's my biggest recommendation, because I've had clients and I do some volunteer coaching and stuff, and they're like, I can do it. And I had this one woman, she was working on her resume for 6 months, and then she kept changing it and didn't, and at the end of the day, she had somebody write her resume. So it's like 6 months of wasted time, effort, and energy that you could be focusing on learning more about yourself and then being able to have some great interviews with that.
This is going to sound like a dumb question, but why do you think the interview is so key? Like what is happening in that interview that is making it so important?
Yeah, so the thing that's happening is the hiring manager, again, they have a problem. They posted a job description and it's kind of showcasing all of the issues that they have to contend with. When you read a job interview, or I'm sorry, a job description, you're kind of putting yourself in that job. Like, okay, can I do this? Do I want to do this? That kind of thing. But then where the magic happens is coming up with accomplishments and converting them into a story to match those key points in that job description. So it takes a lot of effort. You can't just go in there and wing it. Many people do. But if you really want to make an impact, the stories that you're going to be bringing are going to be matching those problems that they're showcasing in the job description. And now with ChatGPT, it you have a strategic thinking partner. You can ask ChatGPT, hey, give me 20 potential interview questions on this specific job description. So there's no more excuses. There's no reason for you to not know how to prepare for interviews anymore. And everybody should be customizing their resume based on that interview as well. But that's why I think the biggest piece of the puzzle is the interview, where this is where you're showing to the hiring manager that you are going to be the right person to help them plug that hole.
Yeah. And you mentioned the story vault. I wanted to ask about that and what that is and how that can help, especially in the interview.
So generally what I do is I tell my clients, identify the biggest 8 to 10 accomplishments of your career. Once you have those done, and you can easily do this with ChatGPT, you want to identify what was the problem, what was the action that you took, and what was the solution. And then you take that problem, action, solution, and you ask ChatGPT to identify each one of those components. And once it does that, then you can say, hey, ChatGPT, now help me create this into an engaging, concise story that I can use in a networking event, in an interview, that kind of thing. And then each one of those stories is now part of your story vault. The beauty about that is that every time that you have an interview, you just kind of have to quickly review your story vault, to jog your memory, because we do professional resumes. And every time we're having an hour discovery call, the big, oh yeah, I forgot about this. That's like the biggest, phrase. Oh yeah, I forgot that I did that. Oh yeah, I forgot. So another way to create a story vault is to just pull, 20 to 30 behavioral interview questions. And if you're at home on a Sunday afternoon, you're watching TV, grab your laptop and just start answering those questions. Because when you're relaxed and you're in a very no pressure zone, you remember things. Going into the interview and trying to come up with stories is not the time to try to remember, that one accomplishment. So the story vault is a huge component of that preparation. And because you're so prepared and you walk in, that confidence, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel really good. And the other thing is, like, you've been in meetings where you were prepared and you walked in and you're like, I got this. And then other meetings where they're like, hey, Katie, come and present because somebody else is missing. And you're like, oh crap, I don't know what to present. How do you feel when you walk into one situation and a different situation? That's what the story vault and all of the other things that we do, that gives you so much confidence. And then the last question that I'll say about that is, people are like, well, Rosie, what do I do if they ask me a question, I don't know what to say, or I don't have an answer? Super easy. You can just say, you know what? I'm not really sure about that, but I can tell you about this. And then you bring in a story from your story vault. And then I would close the loop and the thank you note that you send, and you're like, do a little bit of research and address that one, because you're always going to remember that one question, or generally that one question that you didn't know what to answer. So just address it in the thank you note and then go from there.
I think that's an interesting point too, the idea of you can prepare, but sometimes it's impossible to know everything that you're ever going to be asked or everything that you're ever going to talk about. And how do you, I guess, kind of being able to redirect politely and then follow up is helpful. How do you help people with that idea? Sometimes there can be the nervousness around like, well, what if I'm not fully prepared, or what if I don't have all of the answers?
Yeah, so actually, one of my clients used this. She was in an interview and they asked her a question. And what we came up for her is, can we come back to that? And then so the interviewer said, fine. And then at the end, they're like, oh, I have an answer to that one question now. Because as you're talking and you're having that conversation, something could spark that can give you that answer. And a lot of times you just need 10 to 15 seconds. And it's okay to say, you know what, can I have a minute to think about that? I know it's awkward and it's just like silence, but that's perfectly fine. We're human, and it's okay for you to ask for, can I have a minute to think about that, and then, proceed from there. So those are a couple of tactics that we use for the interview. And then as far as like the nervousness, I always have my clients do a 2-minute release meditation. So right before you get there, go into the bathroom, sit on the toilet or just be in a stall, whatever, and just breathe in and out for 2 minutes while you say the word release. And that really helps your central nervous system to relax and just be able to be present and just let everything go. And I always tell people, do not prepare, do not cram the 2 hours beforehand, because then your brain is on a frenzy and you want your brain to relax. So 2 hours before the interview, it's done. Game's over. So don't try to cram everything, because you're just going to confuse yourself. So you just want to relax right before the interview.
Well, another thing that I know that you talk about is the idea of is it too late to step into a leadership role? Do you think that's a thing? Is it too late for someone to decide, I'd like to take the next step, or I'd like to be a leader?
It is never too late. And actually, it's so interesting because a lot of people use that leadership word in very different contexts. So for me, a leader is somebody that is an individual contributor that is taking the lead on maybe one project or one particular task. So if you're an expert on just one thing on your team where people go to you, you are a leader already. So if you're thinking that a leader is a manager, then it's never too late to raise your hand. Like I said, I was 40. I was 40 before I was like, hey, I want to be a manager. So absolutely not. And then from there, I went into an executive vice president, and I was, I don't remember how old I was. I think I was 46 at the time. So it was a good time for me because I had had a lot. I had like, 15, 18 years of experience already by then. So for me, it was good to wait because I had a lot of experience and I was a supervisor before and whatever. But it's never too late to step into leadership ever.
Well, do you have any other advice or any other things that you think would be important on this topic that I haven't asked or gotten to that have maybe kind of come to mind while we've been talking?
My biggest advice for people is start taking action today, meaning schedule a 2-hour segment for you once a month. And so the action that you can take today is to schedule those 2 hours at some point during October. And during that October, those 2 hours, you can start trying to figure out, hey, when can I have a conversation with my manager? What do I want to have a conversation with my manager about? What is it that I want to do? Now is a really good time to start thinking about your goals for 2026. January 1st is a good date too, but today is better than January 1st. So schedule, be intentional and schedule one action a month to start working towards your next career goal. That's the biggest thing, is taking action.
I'm guessing that helps with the momentum too. If you're like, locking it every month that this is one thing that I'm going to do, as opposed to, it can be really easy to push it off.
Absolutely. And as women, we're always taking care of everybody else, whether you have kids or not, you have parents, you have a family, you have obviously work, but we always leave, or a lot of times we leave our careers on autopilot. And, leaving something on autopilot means that you don't think about it. And that's not how you need to be thinking about your career. You need to be thinking about your career in a very intentional way. And yesterday we talked about designing your career the way you want to design it with intentionality. And once you start doing all that, you start gaining more and more confidence.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and for talking about this. It's really helpful, and just to get insight into this and the intentionality of it and being strategic and holding yourself accountable to making those monthly goals, or maybe even just pushing yourself a little bit past your comfort zone, and it can reap rewards, maybe not in the immediate, but down the road. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you. This was great.
And if people want to find out more about the promotion readiness map or you in general, where should they go?
Yeah, the easiest place is to go to my website. It's nowomanleftbehind.com, and woman is WOMAN, nowomanleftbehind.com. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn under Rosie Career Coaching or Rosie Zilinskas.
I hope this episode was helpful and shed some light on how to set yourself up for taking that next step in your career when the time comes or when an opportunity presents itself. As an additional note, if you're ready to make a change in your career and don't know where to start, or it feels too overwhelming, check out takeabeatcoaching.com to learn more about a one-on-one coaching program designed to help you navigate a career pivot. Thanks for listening, and take care.